Okay. So,
Okay.
let's
So,
VR.
wait, not yet. Oh wait, how long is it? No, it's only 2 minutes. So, we did this as part of a FIU group, SparkDev. Well, a part of a FIU organization called SparkDev, where groups of students get together and work on a project outside of school. As the VR team, we decided to tackle an interesting problem of getting multiplayer to work as like a project. So we chose to start with Unreal's multiplayer template that they had up until I think recently they updated. Yeah. But so it was a Western style shootout where you and another player start at the same time. You draw the gun, you try and shoot each other first. We thought that would be a really fun game to do in VR. You know, have a timer tick down, you pull out your gun, and then you try and get the enemy. And Western style, we thought it was simple, so we set out to create this experience. And we were not really successful with the whole multiplayer aspect, but we did get to the point where you can host and join a server. You just couldn't see movements from the other player. You can see here we had the guns to holster at the hip. Sound effects, I guess. And then you can go to a practice mode, which when we did our demo, we figured we should have something that people can try out to try out the mechanic. And I think we did really cool, or Edward did a great job at the level design here. Kind of took that basic template and then changed some shaders. We had another person in our group. Yeah, he did the destructible bottles. And overall, the project took 9 weeks. And we made some pretty good progress. So yeah, that was pretty much it. Oh yeah, we got RMAK, which is fun. But yeah,
I think a good tidbit is like the guy that we met that made the template.
Oh yeah, was it Christian Allen? From the guy from Magic League?
I think it was Alan Noon.
Or Alan Noon, I always get him mixed up. Yeah, Alan Noon, when he was working for Unreal, he did the template, and there were some things wrong we were able to improve upon. One of the things he wanted to do was have the hat colors change. First player be red and then the second player be blue. We were able to do that. Unfortunately, we don't have any footage of that. We just kind of wanted to show the functional parts of the game. Also, there's an ammo count with the gun, so you shoot 6 and then you reload. Unfortunately, we didn't get any animations. And yeah, fun little physics there. So I think it was a lot of fun, and yeah.
Yeah, naturally, trying to get the multiplayer shootout to work with VR was really a hassle, especially since it was made with an early version of Unreal. It kind of really showed how much VR had a non-existent multiplayer template. So when you see all these people with all their multiplayer games on, like Steam and stuff, you got to really appreciate how much testing they would have gone through to make their framework work so well, since there isn't really any tutorials online to do it properly. There is a network compendium you can find on like PowerPoint and stuff for like the basic stuff, but there's a lot of little nuances that they just don't talk about. Like for example, the motion controller component cannot be replicated. You have to get references, and there is nothing that stated that.
Yeah, and that was probably the biggest difficulty we had, was trying to get the replication to work with the motion controllers, because by default they have the default replication that Unreal sets up for you, and they need to be handled a little differently. So what we learned afterwards was you had to detach the hands from the motion controllers and then reference their position on the client side and replicate that, manually to the server and then back to the clients. But yeah, it was definitely very interesting working with replication. I think if anyone has any questions, we got like 3 minutes.
Question?
Thank you, Kima.
So you did like hand IK here, right?
Well, the arm IK, yeah. We just had the endpoint be the the wrist. The hands were separate. You can see that they separate from the arm if you reach too far. Yeah, I took the original mannequin model and then deleted the hands, or hand materials. Left the skeleton for the hand, but just don't update necessarily the hand. Just use the wrist and then to the shoulder and use 2 bone IK.
Alright, and how does it look like from the second player? Because it is multiplayer, right?
Yeah, and we couldn't
so will
really.
it be like hands like flying all over the place? Or?
No, we were gonna restrain the player's position so you really couldn't separate it from the body too much, but yeah, you wouldn't, the arm IK, or the arms looked somewhat normal. We couldn't really, like I said, replicate the hands, but we could see our hand, so if the client was there, you'd see that the host had the same local hand positions as himself. You kind of had control over both hands like a puppet. So it looked normal from that point of view, but we didn't really get to see the actual replication to see how that would look.
Will you have more weapons or only guns?
Only the pistols.
Yeah, that was since it was a multiplayer shootout, let's just keep it simple so we could see if we could even get the multiplayer up and running. That's why it was just a simple mechanic, similar to like the Switch's little thing they had to like pretty much demo their new motion controllers, for example.
Yeah, we were just gonna keep it simple, just one model, left and right, and then restrict, the ammo count, so you can't just like shoot continuously. You kind of have to think about your ammo.
Will you make it so you can fumble your gun, please?
No, probably not. To be honest, we're working on another project for multiplayer. This one's pretty much gonna end it here. But we've learned some new things about the replication. We got kind of something working. We still need to look more into it. It's pretty difficult because we work on the multiplayer here at campus, and the Wi-Fi blocks it. So we kind of have to bring our own router that has no ports blocked, and then work with that. So it's slow going to work on that. And then also, to just test and set up multiplayer, you have to have 2 computers with 2 headsets. And testing that and working on it can be a real pain.
Yeah, as it is, we made our own little test dummy, similar to like Unity's 2D tester for VR. So we made like simple digital input movements to replicate VR.
Yeah. To simplify your life on the multiple machines, can you set up VMware and like something like that, and just
yeah, but
locally?
still,
I mean, obviously you can't test all the functionality with multiple headsets, multiple inputs, but at least you could.
You need a computer to run multiple headsets that have that case.
At least virtualize it. And back then, we weren't aware of any sort of virtual headset thing. I don't know if there exists now. I'm kind of out of the loop right now. But like, yeah, as it is, it's like there's no such thing as like a virtual joy for VR, really. That's that simple to use.
You need someone to be in VR, and then for 2 headsets, you
especially
need 2
so like
computers.
because the nuance of the tracking system and how it updates, especially with Unreal, is pretty wrong.
All right. Anyways, thank you.
Good stuff.
No, don't clap. You're supposed to say it.
All right, so Gary, you're back on, man. So everybody's favorite, safety slot. That's another win for you, man. Come on, you know it. I think it's the other side, right?
All right, so. I think you see on my face, but. So, it's the dark future of 2019.
Don't tell me.
And Safety Town has been voted the most dangerous town in all of America. So a corporation called Slapcore decided to move in with one of their safety officers, Safety Sam. Oh no, I'm sorry, Slappin' Sam. And his job is to prevent people from hurting themselves through accidents and safety violations by slapping some sense into them. And you play as Slappin' Sam. So, right now I only have a prototype. Some of you have seen it already. Does this get sound?
That's bad.
I think I did that. So, there we go. Is it getting sound?
It should. Probably from your PC.
I don't think it is. So, as you can see, it's a top-down game, and you can run around. I only have one street so far. And as you can see, these are the citizens of Safety Town, just kind of like meandering around. And you can slap. And now, right now, I don't have anybody committing any safety violations. I haven't been able to practice that yet, but you can just slap people for any good reason. So, eventually, the concept is that you would have to keep an eye on these people and see if they're doing anything wrong. As you can see there, there's a grill. That's a hint at something. You can see there's some instruments to set a fire with. And that's about all I have right now. It's kind of fun, just being able to slap people. As you can see, all the people, they have randomized clothing. I have 2 skin colors right now. It's all completely, sometimes they don't get back up. I'm not sure why. I guess sometimes he doesn't know his own strength. And yeah, eventually, so it's basically going to be kind of like a, you just watch people, see what they're doing. If they're doing something wrong, you go up and slap them, and if you miss it, they'll end up hurting themselves, or worse, and you lose a point. And oh, that's basically it, I guess. Any questions?
When can I buy it?
When can you buy it? When it's finished.
Good answer. So that was a
Will you
professional.
earn some points when you like slap someone?
Yeah, if you slap them when they're committing a violation, you get points. If you slap them for no good reason, you lose points.
So if they're committing a violation, can they possibly die?
In some cases, possibly.
So is there like a health system? Like if they're doing something that might hurt themselves, they'll lose health? And if you slap them,
Oh no, once they
you have to balance that?
I actually didn't think of that, honestly. But the concept is that basically once they hurt themselves, they're out. They're no longer in the game, so it's up to your imagination what actually happens to them. Well, actually, you'll be able to see it for yourself, but...
Have you thought about co-op?
Huh?
Have you thought about co-op so that you have a list of players?
Co-op?
Yeah.
That's down the line. Right now, I just want the game. I want it to be a game that you can play. I haven't got that far yet. Any other questions?
Can Slappy Sam get slapped himself?
Can he get slapped himself? I haven't thought of that, actually. If I make the co-op, maybe. If he runs across the street without looking both ways, maybe.
Another safety Sam, safety Sal comes running on the side.
Yeah. What about Safety Samantha?
Well, yeah, I chose a name that could be used for man or woman. Sam could be used for a woman. So I haven't modeled. I did all the modeling myself in Blender. I haven't done a female model yet, but once I do, well first I'm gonna have some of the citizens will be female. I also want to have a few kids, and well, you know, they might chase a ball across the street in front of a truck or something.
It's a violation.
Yeah. So, and of course, you know, there will be female citizens, and you can also choose to be a female if you want. You can probably change your skin color, maybe customize your outfit a bit. But, yeah. So there will be a safety Samantha.
Do you get a badge?
Do you get a badge?
You get a chief that's threatening to take away your badge.
You guys are giving me all these ideas, like, yeah, sure. Yeah.
If you have a gun, do you still slap them?
If you have a gun, do you still slap them?
If they have a gun.
If they have a gun, do you
and
still slap them?
violation.
You just slap them carefully.
Hard enough to get rid of the gun, right?
Guess you could dodge bullets or something. I don't know. Anybody else?
When is the next milestone?
When is the next milestone? I'm gonna start working on this. Like, I mean, well, I've already, since I put up the Pixel app display thing, I've been tinkering around with it a bit. So as soon as I get something done, I guess.
Oh, looking forward to it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to keep working on this and get back into it as soon as I can. I mean, I'm already kind of, like I said, got into it, so.
Good stuff.
Anybody else?
Oh, I guess. So, next up, Dima. So, another one of our developers, our lead programmer, well, CTO actually. Lead programmer is too little for you, I know. So, he has some really awesome stuff he's been working on as well. But, you know, I'm gonna let you say more about it, obviously.
All right. Meanwhile, my name is Dima. I'm working with Myron and guys on Soulkeeper VR. But right now I'm going to present something else. I'm working on, in my studio, on another project called, it is a game, Star Fortress. And it is a game, will be like, I would say, like Diablo in sci-fi universe. So I'm like really big fan of Diablo. All right. All right, so when I start like making prototype, right now it is on prototype stage, I start implementing different technologies just to make sure that you know, the skeleton is working before going to like to design, graphics, modeling, and so on and so forth, right? So the first idea, it's always good to make sure that the skeleton of your project is fully working, right? Like you may say like basic mechanics, right? So one of the mechanics in RPG games is a map, right? So so it will track where you've been already, right? So you don't know where you were because it's kind of like all hidden, but at least you know what places you already visited. So, and in the games like, let's say, like Diablo, if you remember, they implemented like really nice mini-map. Okay, let me open up, I guess, Microsoft Edge. All right, so let me zoom it in. All right, so before doing Minimap, I did a research, right? And this research was like how other, like, good games made this technology working. So first I tried to like visually like understand what it's all about. Of course, I went to marketplace, I went to like a lot of forums, watched a lot of videos before coming into conclusion, right? So this was my like thought process how to implement Minimap. So I started with Diablo. So let's say Diablo 2, right, implements Minimap in a really like easy fashion. Is basically like they have this matrix and they just render cells, whatever it is in that matrix, right? And then they just display it on the screen in some type of angle. So it is very simple. There is no really like off-screen special rendering or whatever it is. So you just like simply just get whatever it is in array to display and display it. So it's like very simple. Now, like another way of displaying Minimap is to have a camera pointing down to your world and like render it, right? And then you render in memory texture, and then you display it on the screen. Let's say a game like Path of Exile. They did exactly like this way. They just specify like what actors they need to render and whatever is not to render, and then they display it very nicely on the screen. So then there is another game called Grim Dawn. Right? I also really like this game. It's like very close to Diablo in style, but they went like really far. Right? What they did is they actually like render the whole world from a camera. Right? Then they stitch it all together, then export everything to Photoshop, right? In a Photoshop, they do post-processing with like bunch of layers. Then they save it all into like ready-to-go texture, and this is what we see on the screen. And they combine multiple techniques here. They render navigation mesh with the world, and they combine them together. And so like that you can have on the map like places where you can go to plus some environment. And since it is exported to Photoshop, then artists can do some little touch-ups here and there to make it looking nicer. All right, so then Diablo 3, right? So I couldn't find much information how exactly it's made, right? But I looked like kind of like under microscope on Minimap, and with trials and errors, I basically like prove, at least to myself, that this Minimap is navigation mesh. Navigation mesh with some post-processing going on in the background to make like all these nice lines, like to put texture on the places where you can walk. And I thought this is kind of really nice, and it kind of looks really cool too. So I kind of like very easy for me to navigate it. So I was thinking, okay, so this could be the base, right? So this is, I want to show you the algorithm, basically how I made the Minimap for Star Fortress. Right? To start with, like everything what I do is in runtime. There is no Photoshop involved, right? So I decided that if I can program, I better program the whole damn thing, right? So it will work. So the way how I do it, so basically I have a nav mesh right? That is like generated by Unreal. And from that nav mesh, I create a geometry, right? For every single triangle in a nav mesh, I'm making my own representation of it in 3D space. But, you know, your world can be like really huge, right? So the idea was to split this nav mesh into sectors. So like that, when you render it, you will render only the sector. Because, you know, if you know how video card renders, right, it will render like the whole model, right? Even though if you can see only like 1 pixel of that model, right? It might have like, you know, thousands of polygons, right? But if only 1 polygon on the screen, everything will be rendered. So idea was like just simply split it into sectors, right? For efficient rendering. So now, since I did that, so idea is like this: to render my generated nav mesh, right, into dynamic texture in a such way that nav mesh will be non-transparent and the rest is transparent, right? And then it led me to the idea to make edge detection, right? So if you look at, for example, in Diablo, right? If you could see like all these like lines, like, you know, the edges are outlined, and I was thinking, why not? So I did research how to do that. Right? I like read a lot of things, tried a lot of things. Let me tell you, a lot of things didn't work. Right? At the end, kind of like I managed to do exactly what I wanted, and I came up with the material. Right? I put material on that generated texture, and this is how it came up. Right? So it came up in such way that I wanted to have like areas where you can walk, where my nav mesh is kind of like highlighted with specific color. And whenever you cannot walk, right, those areas will be transparent. So also there was like a big challenge on the width of outline, right? So when you move your camera like back and forth to do zoom, what happens is that those lines can be wider, can be thinner, so it doesn't look good. So I also have to implement algorithms that dynamically adapts to the distance to render, so all these lines will be like really nice. So once you did the mini-map, I mean, it's kind of cool, but another tech is how to do a fog of war, right? Because you don't want to show player like the whole area, obviously, right? So to visualize fog of war, I made a grid in the world. So technically I have an actor that like splits the whole world into this little like cells. Basically it is 100 by 100 units, like 1 meter long. All right, I understand. And so then I transform wherever it is like this fog of war, right? It's basically it is a matrix. And then inside this matrix, I do drawing of a circle, right, to highlight area where I am. And when I put it all together, this is how it came up. So you see, it's kind of a very nice fog of war with like smooth edges. So I also do some smoothing, so it's not like so pixelized. Then each actor on a minimap that I want to track, right, we'll have like component like minimap marker, where you can specify like all the parameters, and at the end you display it on like in UMG, right, where I display like all the icons, because there was this another challenge that you know, UMG is strictly 2D, right, while like what it was rendered, it is rendered even though it is from top camera, right, but it kind of like rotated according to the player, to the player's preference. So there was also like, I have this algorithm to properly match up icon positions relative to the map. Because you know, all these icons are in UMG, and map is actually like rendered from 3D World. So big challenge was actually to map it all together. And just one more thing, let me quickly show it in action, actually, which will
For
be...
sure you win the longest presentation award.
This book
Yeah,
is too far. I mean, too fast. All right, so this is the prototype, right? So I can walk, and you could see, like, you know, like map is opening, and just to make it, let's say, full screen, I can also do like this. So there you go. This is the minimap. I could have shown you more, but time is ticking.
already ticked.
All right.
All right, really
All right,
good
so
stuff
there you
as
go.
always.
I guess questions would be like way after.
Buy the game, there you go. Okay, so next up, Cuddlepunk. Just so you guys know, Cuddlepunk is released, so if you haven't bought it already, it's about time you bought it right now. So
Is it on App Store?
Soon. We finally got our logistics taken care of. Soon. Trademark. It's on Android right now.
Buy game, but where?
Android.
I don't have Android.
And soon.
Soon you'll get Android, right?
Are we, is Rockstar coming out with something?
no.
Okay.
Why?
That's fine.
Yeah, one spread.
Okay, that's fine.
Are you guys ready?
Yeah. Hold on. We're gonna go through this pretty fast. What?
Yeah, we should be quick.
Well, I mean, you know, by now you figure even if you go a little bit over 8 minutes, it's okay.
No, we're not gonna try to.
We're gonna be okay. Yeah, dude. We're gonna see what's up.
All right, so guys, let's give it up for Good Word Games.
Awesome. Alright guys, so like you said, we're Good Word Games, one of the local devs down here, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about our mobile game called Cuddlepunk. It was released on Android, like a month ago, and then we're getting hopefully close to releasing on iOS really soon. It's $1, so if you guys want to check it out. So a little bit about us. These are some of the games that we have worked on together in the past. All of them are exclusively 2D games on Unreal Engine. We've been using Unreal Engine 4 since the moment it released, and we've been getting pretty decent at making 2D games on it. So thanks to Alex's like quick work on the engine. So what's Cuddlepunk, right? So Cuddlepunk is this little tap and shoot game that we started working on last year. And this is a game that I had an idea while we were working on a different game, and I was on the way to his house, and I go, hey man, there's a really cool idea if we made a little game where you tap and shoot monsters on the screen, and you only have 6 bullets, right? And that's kind of how it started. This project is also the first time I ever do art for a game, ever, or just, I hadn't done art in years since I was like a little kid. So I started to pick it up, and I was like, all right, so these are kind of like the first things that I actually made. A little first enemy, little concepts, right? And so as we worked on this game, we went through a lot of different iterations, right? We had a lot of different enemies, a lot of different guns, bullets, ideas. And the more that on the first round of like prototypes that we started testing, we realized that the game was not where we wanted it to be. The game was too spammy. You can just tap anywhere on the screen, and at some point you're just gonna win, no matter what. Because the main mechanic was that every time you shot and destroyed an enemy, it reloads all your bullets. So it turns out that when we gave it to people would just start like clicking everywhere, and they're like, yeah, you know, we win, right? And it's just like, how fast can you do it? So after iterating on a bunch of enemies, a bunch of different levels, concepts, we decided at some point during the new year of last year, right? So around New Year's last year, we're at that point and we kind of scrapped the entire project and kind of started it over from scratch. And that's when Alex started working on some of the ideas for the refresh. You wanna?
Yeah, because initially we had the concept of, you know, being able to look at a challenge, solve it within a certain amount of time, and use the limitations of how many bullets you had to solve it. So we kind of went back on it. We were doing procedural generation initially, like based on however many waves you beat, the harder enemies will spawn based on that number. So if you got to like wave 60 and you're moving to wave 61, we would start saying, okay, you can use enemies that have 30 HP cost-wise, so it would start spawning those enemies first, and then whatever remainder HP from the wave number, it would spawn the lesser of the enemies. But we didn't get a good feel from that, and we felt like it was also missing the mark, so I thought that maybe it was better if we got something a little bit more hand-placed, a little bit more specific. So then I started working on a wave builder that allowed us to kind of do that, and it allowed us to make each individual wave by hand the way we wanted it to be, so we can set up puzzles the way we wanted it to be. So it had a little bit more purpose than just tapping on the screen and shooting.
Right. So after the new year, right? Alex was working for months on a level builder, right? Like tool that later on I would go and use and start hand making all the levels. And while he was working on that, I worked on redoing all of the art on Cattlepunk, from the logo, all the enemies. I recreated the level, added some cows because we had no cows in the game, and it's Cattlepunk, right? And then like the UI for level selection, which that's not the final one. It looks completely different now. But it kind of went through a lot of iterations, and like the more that I iterated on it, I feel like the better it got. I chose like a really limited color palette, and I kind of stuck through it the entire way. So there's only like 32 colors max for the entire game. And right now, this is more what the current version looks like. That's our like current logo and like start screen. And after a while, once he was able to finish with the wave builder, then I go in and I started making waves. We have about 60 waves on the game right now. Then you can go in and play. It'll, you know, it depends. You can beat that game anywhere from like an hour to, you know, never. Because, you know, it goes up in difficulty pretty decently. But overall, we're pretty happy with the way that this has turned out. And one of the biggest hurdles for us in this development was doing it for mobile. Making a mobile game with Unreal Engine came with a lot of trials, right? One of which was getting the screen sizes correct and the UI correct and make sure that it all scaled properly. At first, when we started putting it on the phone, it looked terrible. Like all the pixels looked really bad, or they warped in size. Getting the UI size to not cut off on certain phones, and we did it on Android. Android has a ton of different phones with a ton of different screen sizes, and we were kind of getting frustrated. And that actually took us a few months to be able to fix. And then it was getting it to like, you know, have the least footprint on a mobile phone as well, to cutting it down like the size, making sure that it functions correctly. We actually have two builds up, one that runs on older phones without the bullets to glow. It's for performance, while the better phones like have that bullet like initialized. Also, the game, when we first launched it, crashed 100% of the time, the first time that you ran it, which Alex ended up fixing, thank Lord. And now it's running fairly smoothly, and we hope that once we get to the iOS and we start testing on it, hopefully soon, we hope that we don't have that issue. And it kind of should be good to go to run, and we'll announce it pretty soon, yeah. I hope.
It's mostly been just logistic hurdles with iOS.
Yeah.
They just want too much stuff from us.
Yeah, like I had to apply for like this, for like the developer license.
I'm going to show them all
yeah. Yeah, so we had to apply for the developer license. Yeah, that's like not anything else. So yeah, I have to apply for developer license. I'm still waiting for something for my business, which is like some stuff in the background to come through, so then I can apply for the license, and then I have to pay the $100, and it's an ordeal. So make sure that if you are gonna put something on mobile, make sure that you do all that work beforehand, right? Like open up the accounts on Google Play, open up the accounts on iTunes, get all the things you need to go, and then start testing as soon as you can. Like put it up and start testing not just the game on the phone, but also testing distribution, right? Like that's, so you don't have to manually upload your game, but you do it through the system to make sure that it works. So, and then what we're gonna show you right now is a little bit of the wave builder that Alex built, which was probably the best part of this entire project, because it let us and even now lets us build waves really fast.
Correct.
We implement enemies like really quickly, and then we just prop them into the system where we can make as many waves as we want.
Yeah.
So you're saying you could reskin it pretty quickly, isn't it?
Yeah, so we can
Yeah,
set up any
totally.
wave we want, however we want, and
Yeah.
every enemy, any enemy that we add new, we can put to here. I wanted to make like a nice container for it, but then I just got busy like bug fixing, so
Yeah.
kind of went away from that. And then, you set up the wave however you want it, and then you can just test it, and it'll pop it up. But this is meant for mobile screen, so it don't look good here. Like we get it to like mobile screen size, it should look better.
In the editor, can you
Yeah, there.
put direction of the enemies?
Yeah, if the enemies have a direction, you can change the direction in the editor. If they have a spline path, you can choose what direction they go on the spline path. If they choose a random spot, and then on top of that, you can put it if it's an elite or not. And elites are faster, choose more random objects and stuff like that to go for.
Are you guys bringing this to the PC, some kind of version for?
We could, yeah,
We
it's
could.
not a problem to do that.
I'd probably change a couple things, like make it so that instead of having it like that, it's gonna show like a 1920 by 1080, and then we'll have stuff here,
Yeah,
like
that
to
way.
cover up. Yeah,
But yeah, and
that's kind of fun.
this was a hurdle because this is a wave builder that's running on runtime. It's a runtime wave builder, so I had to come up with like a roundabout way to save this data and then load that data into the phone, and that was a pain in the butt. So I learned a little bit more after that of how to serialize data into the map itself on compile time and not runtime, and that'll be another thing that I'll talk about in a few minutes, I guess.
Yes. So we had some questions. We have time for questions for a sec, or Hazar?
How many different like phones did you have to change like the res for?
Well, we pretty much made it like as adaptive as possible, but we chose was it 15 by 9 at the end?
So 16 by 9.
16 by 9.
It's a 16 by 9 ratio. But what we ended up doing for the background, so that if we didn't have the stretching thing, we made one big background, and then if the phone was bigger, it'll just show more of the background.
Yeah,
if it was smaller, it'll show less of the background.
Yeah. So everything else was centered on the level, and then we just extended the level out. Because some Android phones are 15 by 8 or like 17 by 6, and it's weird, like because all the bevels and stuff like that, and sometimes people try to experiment. So we had a lot of issues with that, but Google, funny enough, is very kind in how they aggregate data. Maybe kind is a nice word, it might be a little scary, but they can tell you all the phones that support your game and give you all the data and metrics for each one of the phones. It's really nice on their Google Play console.
Yeah.
It's really
Is it possible to design the GUI dynamically, similar to like mobile development for like webs or anything like that?
So we were trying to do that initially, but we found that centering was a really big problem, because you take the width and height of the phone and the render that you can get from the viewport, right? And you try to adjust it to the right spots, but you'll never get it where the artistic eye wants it to be. It'll always be off by like a pixel or two. So we found that it was better to just like adjust the background image and keep things where they're at, and that'll at least like keep like the intended design.
Although our UI, right, like the timer bar, like the bar for the bullets stuff, that does dynamically adjust to the phone, because we put that on the UMG, and we put the UMG that it does adapt to whatever it is.
Right.
But the background was impossible, like for us to do, so that's why we just made it bigger, and they didn't have to bother with it at all. So, yeah, I mean, cool. Good for now. Sorry. Quick,
Oh, yeah,
quick.
One
10 seconds.
suggestion.
10 seconds.
You have to add a market where you can buy the bullets and
No, thank you. You have a question, sir?
That's not a question, man.
Did you say this is like a puzzle type game?
Yeah, it's kind of like a puzzle type game. I think when we came up with the initial concept for it, it was to be a puzzle type game, but we had to go through a few iterations to get it where it is now, to actually make it a puzzle type game.
Really good stuff, guys.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. We'll be back.
So, next up, we're lucky to have some really good and old veterans in the gaming industry. Rick, unfortunately, is not here, but Hugh is here. But he can give a better introduction about himself than I could. But before he steps up here, I'm really looking forward to the game they're working on, and that's Ascent of a Wizard. And I know it was for VR, but now it's also for different platforms, right?
Yeah, you know it. Wow, you know better than a lot of people. Very good. All right.
So let's give it up for Hugh.
All right, the hardest part of this demo is holding this laptop, which is like 380 degrees.
Probably 300 pounds too.
It's pretty heavy. All right, we're... And I do need to plug this in, or it's gonna... All right, so yes, like Myron was saying, this was originally designed as a VR game, but it was also meant to be on multiple platforms. It wasn't ever just a VR game. It's also PC and console. We wanted to make VR as the lowest common denominator, so to speak. Like, it even supposed to work on the gear. The game's completely playable with one button. But it also works if you have more buttons. It's you know, Xbox One, PS4, PC, and all the headsets, including the gear. So let me explain a little bit. I'm going to eat up a little of my demo time just explaining who we are. We're Ghost Punch Games. We're an indie studio based in Sunrise, and we mostly work on other people's games. The name of the game that we're working on for ourselves is called Ascent of a Wizard. For those of you old enough to remember a movie called Ascent of a Woman, it's a bit of a pun on that. Anyone remembers the Al Pacino movie? The game is kind of meant to be funny. It's kind of a play on Lord of the Rings and fantasy tropes, but I'll get to that in a little bit. I'm just gonna have to skip over all this stuff, but you know, Ghost Punch Games works on a lot of really good games for other people. We've worked on, in our past, we've worked on multiple Call of Duties and BioShocks and XComs and Gearbox's Borderlands. Just recent projects where I can finally just announce we've been working on Mortal Kombat 11, we're working on Borderlands 2 VR, the latest Civilization. There's a couple projects I still can't mention that we're doing for both 2K and Gearbox. But what we haven't really done is work on, or at least publish any games of our own. So that's, you know, what we do for our day job. We work on other people's stuff. And I'll throw out a little plug. If anyone else feels they have the skills and interest in working on really cool games like that, talk to me after this, although I probably only can stick around for about 15 minutes after this. But you can always just drop me an email at hugh@ghostpunch.com. So, Ascent of a Wizard. Actually, there's more to it, but I'm going to get to the demo because I only have 8 minutes. I would have actually shown it in VR. The version that I'm going to show you works, the same game works in VR as well as on PC. But we have one 8-minute timer, and if I gave you a headset, we would need 30 16-second timers. So can't do that. So I'm going to just show you the trailer really quick. It kind of explains things.
I mean, he wouldn't get very far in life being called more now, would he?
So let's get to it because time is running out. There we go, full screen. So,
we're not seeing it yet. We're still seeing this.
Oh. So how do I send this to that screen?
Try alt, what was it, alt tab? No, start tab, was it? Start tab and arrow.
You'll see it over here.
Let me try something.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, that's fine. That's the game, right?
That is the game. It's got sound.
Yeah, you'll see it here. You'll see it when it pops up here. It'll pop on the screen.
I'm not safe. It's start, tab, and arrow, but I guess it doesn't.
Maybe you have multiple desktops.
I'm gonna stop the timer so it doesn't stress you out.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
let's,
gonna have to delete this one, or not to.
Yeah, let's go to the settings for
Yeah, feel free to close all that down.
Where's the mouse? That's the mouse now.
No, it's up here.
Okay, so what screen is this? All right, so we're this screen. Got it. Okay. So we're going to. Is this it?
That's it.
Switch the primary screen maybe?
Yeah, go to display settings and change screen.
There.
Yeah. All right. All right, let me restart this. All right, so you play Seymour the Seer, who is the little wizard there, and your goal of the game is to get to the top of the mountain to defeat the Eye of Mauron. This is the name of the world, by the way, is Middle Uranus, and it is a lot like Middle Earth, but instead of being Mount Doom, this is Mount Goose, and instead of the Eye of Sauron, it's the Eye of Mauron. And the way that he's going to get there is by doing spells, and the main spell that he does is teleportation. So the only places that Seymour can teleport to are places that he can see the ground of. So that little rock that's right in front of him, he could teleport to that, but the one that's off in the distance, he could not until he gets to the rock ahead of him. So the goal of the game is to just keep climbing until you can make it up to the top and you can see the base of where Mauron is and eventually banish him. This is just really a small level for demonstration purposes. The real levels would be like at least 2 to 4 times the size of this. And I'm gonna get going. It's all first person. For anyone who has seen this in the past, one of the big changes we added now is that the staff is 3D as opposed to, it used to just be a 2D UI element. Now it's an actual 3D staff. It has a blue orb in the top that shows how much mana you have, and then it's got a timer. And when Mauron turns to face you, that means you're in his gaze and he is draining your mana. You can see the orb turns red and you can see the mana starts to drain. And so I can talk a little more freely. I'm just going to go ahead and put it into God mode, so I don't have to worry about dying. But the goal of the game is to avoid the gaze of Mauron while you're climbing and avoiding other hazards as well. And again, the way you do that is you teleport. If you move the cursor someplace you can't teleport, it's a red dot. If you move it where you can, you see a little picture of Seymour and it turns green, and you can teleport. That's another thing we added was the little 3D camera lerp that we didn't have before. Up in front there's a fire geyser. That's something you have to get by. You can't teleport onto it or you lose mana. This right here is a mana geyser, which will refill your mana a little bit. And I'll just get going. So I can't go here right now because there's a fire geyser, but once it's gone, I can go over it and get past it. And you can see it starts out as a little sprig of fire, then it turns into a column of fire. It's just a little timed puzzle you have to get past. Obviously, it's a lot easier when I'm not having to worry about things. Also, other tools at your disposal are some spells. Again, this whole game can be played with one button, so I've just been teleporting with the left mouse button, but I also can hold the left mouse button, and a little spell wheel comes up, and I can do different spells, like a shield, which would protect me from the gaze of Mauron. I can lay down the Staff of Staffing, which is just a little decoy. I can lay it down, and Mauron will stop and look at it until he destroys it. But the main one that I will use is towers. And I can preview towers just by going around, and it'll show me what a tower would look like wherever I want to put it. But I'll put one right here. And tower is the only thing that you can teleport to that you don't actually have to see the base of, so it's a good way to climb height. So you can see a little blue arrow shows up, and it'll allow me to teleport up to the top of it. So now I could go to other places. In fact, I could make a tower right there. That's a wandering monster. If he catches up, you can't teleport onto him. But if he catches up with you, he'll start draining your mana as well. This is actually a space orc, or what we call a spork. Again, I'm invincible, so this is really easy. To win this, I have to get above Mauron, so what I can do is build a tower there, teleport up to the top, and then I can banish him by clicking on his banish circle. That is pretty much the game. Sorry I had to go through it so quickly, but you get the idea. I know I've gone over my time, but...
It's fine, everybody.
Any questions?
Before?
You said this is one level.
Yes.
So are they all going to be volcano levels, or are they going to be...
So look, we're trying to keep this, a pretty low budget game. So right now they're all planned to be on Mount Goose, which will all be volcanoes, but with different types of ruins and castles and things like that, all different shapes and levels. Some of the levels will actually have 2 bosses. So the first level you fight the Eye of Mauron, but in the future you'll fight the Spleen of Mauron and the Liver of Mauron, and there'll be some levels where you're fighting the left and right hand of Mauron. Basically, he keeps ripping off body parts, throwing them out there, and in the very last level you fight what's left of Mauron himself.
So it's like you're climbing up the mountain?
Yes. So ideally, we haven't, there's 2 schools of thought for it. Either we're gonna have one huge mountain and each level is different peaks going up that mountain, or it'll just be different areas of the same mountain. Yeah.
How's the gameplay different in VR versus what you just showed us?
So it's almost exactly the same game. Just some of the differences are like the camera movements. Like when you teleport right now, the camera lerps back and then lerps back forward. We don't have that in VR because it can get some people sick, but other than that, it's pretty much the same.
How do you actually teleport in VR versus using mouse and
whatever button you've got, you know, so it's, the whole game can be played with one button. So even if you've got an old school gear, there's the one button on the side, you can click that one button. You know, it'll work with any controllers. If you've got an Oculus, you can use just the Oculus remote. So it can all 100% play with one button. There are shortcuts, you know, there are things that will, if you've got a controller, you can rotate left and right using shoulder buttons, or you can use one of the buttons to build a tower instantly, but it's not necessary to play the game. So I thought yeah.
What's the team size on this project right now?
So in reality, we've only ever had one programmer on it at any given time, but because we have all day jobs, this is just what we're doing in our spare time. We've had 4 different programmers working on it, but not at the same time, so just kind of serially. I designed it, did a lot of the implementation in UE4 myself, but we've also had a level designer. Again, multiple level designers have worked on it, but only one at any given time. So if I were to say if we had one full-time team on it, it would be a team of about 4 people, 1 programmer, 1 level designer, 1 producer / designer, and then, you know, additional 1 artist working on it. So one UI artist, very part-time, worked on it as well. So, yes?
So these different programmers and stuff, are they part of your company? Or?
Yes. Some of them are contractors, some of them are employees, but yeah, we all keep them busy on one of those other games, you know, we told you about, and then, yeah, in our spare time, we've been working on this. We actually just showed it. Rick, who's one of my partners, he was in Paris at Game Connection, and he was shopping this around to a lot of different publishers, and we've got builds right now in their hands, and we're hoping, you know, within the next few weeks to a couple of months, someone will show some interest. So the game's not finished. We're looking for funding to finish it up. We'll see how that goes. If it doesn't happen, then, you know, we'll just keep working on it slowly in our spare time.
Stuff.
Thank you, Myron.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to this one.
It'll get there. It's
It's
slowly. But, you know, we've got all the other things that keep us busy and happy, so this is fun on the side. Someday, though, it'll become our main focus. Someday.
Fingers crossed it's sooner than later.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, so next, Dima, Azar, Matt, and Ed, get your asses up here. That's, you know, development talk. Okay, so.
I'm calling HR.
Yes. Okay, so let me plug that stuff in. All right, so I'm not gonna give an introduction about Helm Systems and the Soul Keeper. Most of you that have been around here probably have been sick of hearing about us. Plus, it doesn't matter. You guys care about the game. So before I start, real quick and very brief introduction, and yes, I'm talking with myself. So, August 2017, we released the first version of our early access game, Soul Keeper VR. It didn't go as well as we wanted. There was a lot of hype before that. I guess that kind of worked against us, but that's fine, you know. Of course, at the time, there was a lot of unexplored ground in VR, so it was quite a challenge to get what people want. So, you know, we had to get out there and see how people respond to it. So pretty much ever since, we've been working very hard on the game, and, you know, all those guys here, including myself, of course, but especially, you know, Dima on the technical front, you know, our newest additions, Matt, Ed, and Hazer, also have been working very hard. Even though they've been a couple of months on the team, it's like they've been here for years. And, you know, me, that's why I grew a beard. I'm gray. So yeah, I'm getting older just by working on that. So pretty much we're preparing for early access version 2. We've done a lot of stuff, and those guys will give you more details on that. But before we jump into the technical stuff, let's look at, for the first time ever, and, you know, a lot of people are looking forward to this. This has never been seen anywhere before. We just finished it today. So for the first time ever, this is the first official trailer for Soul Keeper VR Early Access 2.
business.
So, Dima, why don't you take it from here and let everybody know what pains we've been through?
All right. The main thing what we did is like for the player, right? We added ability to pick up different stuff from the floor, like you know, player can have different weapons. Actually, like all type of weapons. It is like a bow, and like arbalete, sword, even two-handed sword. Then player can have like a lot of like other things, like let's say like a helmet, right, and a shield. So we like really upgraded what player can do with its own body, what he can do in the game. So we added a lot of physics, so you can interact with a lot of objects in the game, like, you know, pick up stuff, throw, whatever it is. Then big overhaul was on AI itself. So from like somewhat like dummy AI, now it became like really challenging. So you need to, like, you know, like for some bosses we have, you need to be like really prepared. So it will give challenge and hope it will drive a lot of interest to, you know, to beat that sucker. Because it is like, you know, it is challenging. Then, what else did we do?
Oh, well, when I got started, I started on the AI for the deer, or some of the animals. That was very interesting, trying to set up a passive kind of animal that will just hide and that you can hunt down, track even. And then we also gave the player holsters. You know, you may want some weapons that you can access quickly from your shoulders or from your waist. And then also, you know, you may need a sword that the merchant supplies. So then we added some paying mechanics to be able to purchase and sell weapons and items.
Hazer, what do you have to say about our optimizations?
Well, there were two areas of focus. Huh?
Do you want your slides?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's easier to say what I mean. Yes. Okay, cool. So, one of the things that I focused on was redoing the hands. As you can see here, this is what we had before, where the root of your hand was not at the wrist, which created a problem when you know, creating animations, and when you're doing something in VR, with your hands, the animations for each individual object are going to be different, unless you have like a hand-eye system, but that's something we're looking into later. So the hands we have now are like this, and they look beautiful, don't they? So with these hands, they're actually rigged to something I recommend a lot to everyone, having the skeleton be rigged to the Unreal skeleton, because when you do something like that, it really helps with having a library of animations available to you through either marketplace assets or making them yourself. Really, it just makes things a lot easier. Other than that, we worked on particles, updating the particle systems that were in place. You know, you saw a lot of blood, you saw a lot of magic, and a lot of those things happen really fast, but at the same time, they're very dynamic. But Ed could talk a little more about that.
Yeah, so essentially, one of the nice things about Unreal, and it's extremely pivotal for VR, is you can control the performance of every single particle that you show. So particle count, performance tick, transparency of that, all that stuff can be controlled, which, considering the current state of the forward render, which is the main renderer used over the traditional one called deferred for VR, is pretty much universally used over it because the performance difference is huge, even without having some of the beneficial things like transparency and reflections that you would normally get with deferred. Just the visual quality you can just produce with forward rendering just makes up for it, especially if you just cheat them in. So for example, right here, let me see.
I'm looking for the performance tab.
Yeah.
That's in a different picture.
Here.
Well, I mean, decreasing the particle count is one way to optimize it.
Yeah, that's one of the major ways. Is each part. Yeah, you can either decrease it globally. Usually when that's something you have to really work out for if you're doing VR and you're getting particles from the marketplace. Usually the artists don't intend it to be used for VR, and most of the time when you're getting those marketplace items, they can get away with putting insane amounts of particle counts to make the effect look nicer. So you'll see like a tiny little spark effect have about 500 particles for no reason. Yeah. And it could be used up to 100 times for the full effect, for example. And you'll be wondering why your game went down to 10 FPS when you're in VR for like a split second for no reason. Then you just look around for these little niche things, and then and you're like, oh, that's probably why. Another thing is for every one of these particle tabs, if you click on them as well and you go to the performance area, which let me see if I can find.
No, you're not good.
That's good.
We would need Unreal open for that.
Yeah, so there's a tick option there.
It's called minimum time between ticks.
Exactly, and they have like a specified rate, so you can convert their specific unit system to what it actually is. So I think it's like around 30 seconds, 33 seconds, something like that. And that's really important because some of these particle effects, for example, that towering flame that's really huge, you can reduce it to an extremely low amount and you won't really notice it. So for example, I believe ours was set to around 24 to 32 FPS, and there's no noticeable difference for the player, visually speaking, because of how long it lasts for and what you're doing at the same time. And just decreasing it by that amount severely increased the performance, since it doesn't have that cost of trying to render all that physics that the particle would inherently have. Because a lot of the times, instead of making pre-rendered animations for all the particles and stuff, they use a bunch of velocity and things like that for it.
But there are more projects to show, so
yeah.
So to pretty much sum it up, we have been reworking the whole game from scratch. We've changed all the mechanics. We've pretty much stripped the whole thing apart and started again. Questions real quick? Anybody?
When's the teaser going up?
That's not a question, but
Are you guys the whole team?
The whole development team, but we have also a marketing guy, we have the musician. I mean, the music was done in-house. Most of the assets are done in-house. Whatever marketplace assets we get, we actually modify the crap out of them. Because, we don't want to look like another 1,000 games, So,
Be smaller.
So what's the open world aspect of this? I the previous one, you're inside one castle. So do you actually still walk into a castle at some point, or what's the...
Oh, you can go wherever you want right now. So it's literally open world. I mean, it's a small open world, but it's still pretty big. So it's open, you can go wherever you want. We have different environments like woods, dungeons, castles, houses, you know.
What's the goal now?
What's the goal? Just complete quests and keep going, you know, and have fun, of course, while you do it.
I was curious, when you're talking about the particle system, are you guys using the Cascade, or are you using the new Niagara stuff?
I think this was Cascade, yeah, Cascade.
Yeah,
it's all Cascade right now.
Cascade at the moment, because Niagara's in early access, and they kind of tell you like, hey, you know, if you're trying, if you're developing for something you want to release, don't really, you know.
Because as a VFX, doing VFX stuff like the Niagara stuff.
Niagara stuff is really cool.
Looks great, just because it's again you don't run into that stuff as much because it's like sprites and things like that, and it really doesn't tax the CPU as much. So I was just curious. So.
Yeah, the GPU simulated sprites are really cool.
Thanks a lot, guys.
When are you releasing the trailer?
When are we releasing the trailer? Well, soon. It has to be this way.
Live release right now.
So, next project. Let's go a little bit. Oh, actually, we have one more Unreal project, and then we started dwelling, into non-Unreal territories. So, next up, Abyss. Another awesome-looking VR multiplayer game, and I'm really looking forward to that one as well.
All right, you. Later.
I promised I'd at least put them on. I can't wear them because they're blue. But,
So you got HDMI, right?
Yep.
Is there power somewhere?
Yeah. So let's hear it for Patrick. He has some really cool stuff he's working on. So,
oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
come on, let's hear it for him.
So yeah, basically right now the current state of Urbis is it's going to be a multiplayer game similar to like a Unreal Tournament style of game. Because we really just kind of felt like in the marketplace right now there isn't anything in VR that's I don't know, fast and just kind of like a traditional multiplayer type shooter. So, but this is actually based off a concept. This game has gone through a lot of iterations, and it's all based off some source material my friend wrote a long time ago. So I'm going to show you a couple the things just from that. So this one was, let me just see how volume I'm doing here. Wow, that is blazing. So, but he actually shot a short movie. It was maybe about a 10-minute movie. It was originally in Spanish, and we recut it like several different times to come up with these trailers. But just to kind of give you an idea, maybe the background of the story.
The Empire is in danger. In your hands rests the outcome of this war. The dark cult must be stopped. Find Thomas. He is the key to victory. I will not lie to you. We are not on the winning side. You must eliminate the cult's leaders before it's too late. What was once a riot is no more. Bloodshed is upon us.
So that was the original kind of idea that this is based on. It's a steampunk series that we kind of, I don't know, I guess have borrowed a lot of the, stuff, borrowed a lot of the ideas from, I guess, would be the right way to put it. Come on, how do I, slideshow, from beginning. Oh, hey, you're seeing it over there. That is. Okay, so we seem to have some kind of argument about whose logo is better. I like my BioShock version better. They do not. But originally this game actually started as a race game. we thought it'd be a cool idea to have mono wheels that you could race in VR. It went through a bunch of different iterations there. That was the first one I made. I have no modeling background. I literally bought Cinema 4D and that's how it came out. So I was pretty excited about it. But this is kind of the current state of it. It's really dark, and I think it shows up better on the monitors actually. But that's the agent. This is the current player that you are able to select. Some other shots of him. And that's the logo that everybody else seems to like for whatever reason. But it's based on 3 factions. One being SAFE, which is the organization that is kind of in control of the city. The opposition being the Steamers. And the third group that nobody really knows about yet is the Cult. And they're actually kind of ingrained a little bit inside of the SAFE organization, but they've kind of got their own goals and things that are going on. The original idea, once it came onto a VR platform, was a typical waves shooter style thing. I think that was the easiest idea we could think of. But being that that's every game, we were like, all right, let's see if we can try and do something a little bit different with it. This is actually something that I modeled. That post box is my, and then you got the 3 different weapons. You have the SMG weapon, and I'll show some of the other ones later, but this is the general layout of it in the beginning, and enemies would come through the back, and then you would kind of try and work your way through it, and you could play this co-op instead of actually as deathmatch style. We had the sniper rifle that you could actually, you can't tell because I'm holding it to the other eye here, but you could actually look down the barrel out of it. You could pop into third person, and this is what the character L looks like in third person. And it had a lot of elements that I actually really liked, but it just, again, didn't seem very marketable, and it honestly, I didn't think it was all that much fun. And so we were like, let's just scrap this. I want to play old school Doom. I want to have health pickups. I want to do this kind of stuff. So we kind of redid it, and this is more the style that we came up with now, that you can actually see the people in third person. Originally, I think when you were playing co-op, we didn't bother with it because we were like, what's the difference? It doesn't really matter. It was just hands. But I thought it was a terrible idea to not show off the characters that we'd spent so much time, working on, because we really wanted to, just show a level of graphic fidelity in VR that we hadn't seen yet either. And trying to push this in VR with all, high-res PBR materials is very time-consuming, which is part of the reason I think the game is, taking so long, honestly. And then, also getting funding for it is fun too. You can dual wield the pistols. I always thought that was kind of a fun mechanic to actually go Tomb Raider style. And then, let's see, those are some more shots of the SMG. This is what the sniper rifle ended up being. We kind of had to take away the look-through mechanic because I think I discussed this last time. It was so shaky, you could never seem to hold it steady because you're not holding a rigid object. So it would just kind of wiggle. And it was cool. I'd like to bring it back, but we just never could make it work the way we really wanted it to. And there's some of the I didn't really notice these chunks of stuff until I just saw this. I was like, wow, that's pretty graphic, but it's so fast you don't even notice. But the game also kind of spawned off a couple of other things. Well, actually, I say the movie, not the game. There's a card game. I don't know if you guys are familiar with a game called Coup, where you kind of play with different characters and people kind of reskin it. So we've created all the characters for that, so that's kind of the basics of it. It's all done in Unreal 4. It's done in multiplayer. It's funny to hear other people complain about the complexities of that because it's and still is a challenge. Right now it runs through Steam using their multiplayer backend, but obviously, for an Oculus release, that's kind of hilarious, because right now it runs on Oculus for the most part. But I'm gonna see if this actually, since we have the monitors, this might actually show up a little bit better. I still had to crank the contrast a lot because the difference between the headset brightness and monitor for record is quite stark. But just to give an idea of some of this is all captured in-game, from different perspectives that we did. And it turned out really nice, I think, in terms of just graphic quality. And it's a lot of fun because they're running really fast. That was another thing that I felt like was missing in a lot of VR. A lot of it's very slow, and that's obviously because trying to keep up high frame rates is very difficult. But I was like, we want to go fast. We want to go faster. We want to jump. We want to jump between platforms. And we want to kind of have that kind of thing into it. So I got about, let's see, 30 more seconds. So I'll show maybe one more, let's see, if there's anything else. I got one more video that, another recut that we did, same thing, the, of kind of the footage from, oh, it's up QuickTime. Oh, that'll be fun. Yeah, let's see here. How do I go into full screen? There we go.
We thought the world was ours. We were wrong. I was wrong. It's too late now. Whoever is still listening, please heed my words. There is no cure. It was all lies.
So we really were hoping to use the game to drive a few different things, which was, you know, just the idea of a series is one, because they're, you know, the guys that created this, they're also pitching this idea to Netflix and, you know, whatnot to try and do like an anime type thing. So at first it was just like, oh, let's just try and, you know, come up with this thing for, you know, so we can push this advertising thing, and then the game kind of took on a life of its own. And so right now we've submitted it to Epic Games, trying to get them to support it and actually, you know, give us some money to hopefully finish it. I think you guys, I think the website should have been on the thing, but you know, it's just some of the other screenshots of stuff that was in it and a little more information about it. This is the team that was working on it. I gotta be honest, I don't know who, like, these 4 people on the bottom are. I honestly don't know if they actually worked on it or not. The only people that I actually worked with directly were Mikhail, Josh, Sam, and Gabriel, and they're all based over in the UK. I found them because this team released Radio G Racing, which is like a, you know, a launch title. So I was like, okay, they've at least shipped something. Let's get somebody who knows how to do this so I can do it. But the bottom 4, I think they just put them in there and make it look like we had something going on. I really don't know. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of it for right now. It does play. At some point I can show you guys a demo, but does anybody have any questions on this? Yeah, go ahead, sure.
So you said you wanted it to be very fast-paced?
Yeah.
So I was wondering about your locomotion method?
Oh, yeah, so that was an interesting thing, because I don't know if you, I don't think we showed a whole lot of gameplay with that, but you can actually see, like, you know, it's kind of got IK, so going on, like, you full motion, you can look, and they run around, but the, as far as I know, they had to develop all that pretty much from scratch, just to, like, you know, get it to work right in VR, because it was just, there were so many problems with trying to use traditional stuff, but we just used, you know, straight up, like, you know, you just move the stick, and I think we went with whatever direction you're looking is whatever direction you would run, and then you could still kind of override it with a rotation, but that was the general thing. That seemed to be most natural, that you kind of look the way you wanted to go, and forward was always that way, so even if you were looking cross-body and went like that, you'd kind of go that way. And that seemed to work for what we were doing, so. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, anybody else? What's up?
How's the experience of working with the remote team?
Very interesting, because I feel like by the time I wake up, they've already done a whole day's worth of work. So, you know, I really had to make sure I spelled out in writing very well what I wanted done, because otherwise they get up, if they're waiting on me, there's only 3 hours of, you know, crossover to get stuff done. So that was interesting. We're using Perforce for all of our stuff, which kind of sucks because it costs money, so they're constantly taking me on and off the team. I literally don't even think I have the full project right now, because it's like 120 gigs of junk, you know, from 3 different iterations. So it's that part's kind of annoying, but it's a lot easier than GitHub. So you know, if you can do it, I'd recommend it. But that's the only really challenging part, honestly. So. Cool. All right. Cool. Oh, what's up?
Where did you get those goggles?
Oh, Oh, so yeah, when we started making the game, I just went on Etsy and bought a whole bunch of stuff. I wore the watch for it. And I was gonna bring in some of the weapons that were the basis for it, but I was like, I don't know about bringing fake weapons on a college campus.
Don't do it.
So yeah, but yeah, like I bought a whole bunch of stuff on Etsy. There's people that make some awesome, just things on there that we were using as like the model basis for our stuff.
So next up, let's go a little bit into non-Unreal territory for now. So one of the most successful local gaming projects that I know of, and probably most of you know of, is Phelan. So Carlos, why don't you come over here and
So, hi everybody, my name is Carlos Gonzalez. I'm a developer of Phelan. Phelan is a 2D action-adventure RPG set in a medieval fantasy setting. The original concept is to make a full 2D, a full RPG where you go to towns, talk to people, take quests, and from a platformer perspective. When I thought about it, I only had that in a couple of games in the Nintendo era. So even the modern Metroidvania games are not really that deep in the sense of an RPG where you go to towns and explore and that kind of stuff. So that's the basic concept of Phelan. I'm going to show you a trailer that I run a Kickstarter campaign in April for a month, and I've been working full-time since then. And the estimated release is for December next year, so in a year. There will be a character creator where you can change the skin color, hairstyle, hair color, and name your hero. Today I just posted an update where I just redid the inventory, where it's composed by a series of stone slates, and everything is there in stone. I also, the prototype, I had a prototype during the campaign, And after that, there was a lot of interest to have the game on console. So I built my prototype in console too, which was really hard to get on console and performing well in every laptop or on every computer. So I switched to developing in Unity. And I'm also adding a lot of new stuff that I had from back then. And he now grabs ledges like this and does a series of new animations, and he does a backflip and lots of stuff that I didn't have from back then. Yeah. So before the Kickstarter campaign, I also run Square Enix Collective campaign. It lasts for 4 weeks. Every Monday, Square Enix, they have this independent website from them that they every Monday post a new game, a new indie game that basically asks the question, would you crowdfund this game? So it's totally free. You can apply for them, and they help you market through these 4 weeks. They have on Twitter, or they have separate accounts just for the collective. And yeah, so I would recommend anyone looking for funding or looking to crowdfund to do this step first. It's just asking first what's the interest, what's the feedback, and yeah, it has just a voting result of if you crowdfund or not. Yeah. I guess that's it. Any questions?
I have.
Yeah.
Do you organize it yourself?
I do the programming and the art by myself. Yeah. But I contract the music, sound effects, and illustrations and such.
Is there an ETA?
A what?
ETA for release?
It's it's December next year. So
Oh,
in a year.
nice.
Yeah.
So one
I'll
more
do
year.
early access like probably in summer.
Great. Yeah, I mean, you definitely seem to have a good following, so take advantage of it, you know.
Are you thinking a physical version?
Not yet. Not yet. I haven't gotten in that part yet. But I wish. Yeah. I don't know.
Having successfully funded like the project through Kickstarter, would you recommend that to like other developers, like after what you went through?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, but because well, in my case, I was working on this. I started this idea back in 2013, and I work on it on my spare time a lot. And running a Kickstarter is what allows me to work on it full time now. And along with it comes a lot of responsibilities and stuff, but it's also great to follow and have your milestones and do your updates and everything. And there's a lot of people back in your project. They are putting money already, and they already like your idea, so they are going to be in synchrony with your concept. So a lot of the feedback is good, and some of their ideas are actually really, when they suggest something, you really listen, and there is a lot of good things coming from what everybody's interaction. Yeah, I would really totally recommend.
Cool.
It looks gorgeous, man. It looks very
Thank
good.
you.
Excellent
Right.
stuff. Very good. Next, we have Garden Variety Body Horror. I have to say, that's a very interesting name.
It's only half of it.
Out of curiosity, did you guys use any engine, or did you do the whole thing on your own?
This is with Unity.
Unity?
Yeah, this is with Unity.
You guys know HDMI?
Yes. Not sure exactly where it is, but I'm sure it's in there somewhere.
You also need power?
Probably won't need to plug it in. It was just sitting there charging. I'm gonna try to stay under the 8 minutes. If I die in 8 minutes, well, I die.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be. Ooh, sound works.
All right, everyone. We're Jupiter Lighthouse Games. We're out of West Palm. We drove down here actually from Jupiter. I'm Dylan. This is Andy. I do programming. He does art. This is very loud.
Hang on, I got it.
This is the sequel to our previous game called Prototype Mansion.
Use no cover.
Use no cover. This is Garden Variety Body Horror, rare import. It is a faux import from Japan. So all the voice acting is actually in Japanese. He lived in Japan for 2 years, and he had some of his workmates do all the lines for us.
We make PS1 games.
Yes. Yeah.
Why? I don't really know. I forget if I need to start a new game or continue. What do you guys think? Start. All right, I'm gonna skip the intro though. And we're going easy because I'm not ready for this.
So this is the sequel to our previous game. The previous game was a Resident Evil inspired type game. This one is more Silent Hill. Although we like to sneak some other stuff in, some Alone in the Dark, some of the Maniac Mansion.
Some Curse of Monkey Island.
Yeah, we're big LucasArts fans back in the 90s. You'll come from seeing it, we really like the 90s. So this is Hank. Hank is our protagonist in this. His partner, Cass, was the protagonist in the first game. In this game, we introduced this movement with the flashlight, because we're all outdoors. So you can spy around and look for things, and Hank will react when he sees them. This is the inventory system.
Quick menu. I got my lunch. Got some delicious tuna.
Very Tomb Raider inspired.
All right,
inventory.
This is as fast as he runs. I feel like he's too slow, but oh well, the game's out. Nothing I can do about it now. I should have loaded the continue and I did not. All right, I think there's things in here, so I'm not gonna, screw it, I'm gonna follow him. See where he's going.
So you'll see we're actually, the game actually plays in 1080p or whatever resolution you want, but we purposely downsample it with post-processing to make it run at about 320 by 240. These are the monsters that hide around corners.
Do I have knife? Oh, that's weak. Oh no, my inventory's full. We do limited space because it's cool. I'm just gonna go ahead and hang on to this crowbar because you never know when. Oh, that's exactly. So one of the mechanics in the game is that there's these fuse boxes located around, and so you can run up to one. And I have a fuse, so I'm gonna put it in the garden. So now the garden's all lit up. We're currently in the courtyard. I guess you only really learn it through trial by error. But if I go in here and I take the fuse out, well, now it's a little bit more dangerous.
Flashlight's useful now.
We got progression blockers. I feel like I broke the game because now I'm not seeing many enemies, except for him. And it is a vegetable-based game, and so your enemies are essentially from VeggieTales, and they're little jerks. Not gonna deal with you right now, or you. Nope, not you either. And so there's a couple of safe spots in it where you can go and find a toolbox. Oh, what do I have in here? So this is my full inventory: rusty shotgun, brass chicken knife, part of a fishing pole. Found some rust remover. Inventory is full. There we go. So we use safe boxes but ours are a little bit different. Up top is our inventory. Down here is all the stuff that's in the safe.
When we were designing this, I wasn't sure how we should do your full inventory that's in this, the inventory box. And we're like, should we do a grid? Should we do a circle? Should we do? I was like, you know what? How about just a pile of junk? Unlimited storage.
And so there's some MacGuffins in here. There's some stuff that you actually need. It's a puzzle game though, so you kind of just got to figure it out. Let's see if I can. Now I can get this rust remover. Go back into my inventory and combine this with this, and ta-da! Pristine shotgun. We're good to go.
Where's the Game Boy?
Oh!
How do you get that?
That was by the intro. Alright. So this was the regular game, but I'm going to quit out because I don't think we have much time left. And I want to show you something that we're working on right now for an update. If we go back into the game.
So yeah, this game already came out on Halloween, but we're doing an expansion for Christmas with the New Game Plus mode. In the New Game Plus mode, you're going to get a Game Boy in the game. And has anyone here heard of Bitsy? It's on itch.io. It's a web-based little bitmap game engine that's very lo-fi. Well, we found that and we really enjoyed it, and we remade our first game in Bitsy, and I enjoyed it so much that I decided to port Bitsy into Unity. And so what we're gonna have is you go around and you find game cartridges, put them in your Game Boy, and when you play the game, it actually interacts with the game world around you.
I broke it.
You broke it?
I broke it. Hang on.
This was a mid-version build we did today, so
Did I hit continue or start last time?
You did start.
Well, I broke it.
You
I don't...
overwrote your save file, didn't you?
Well, it should still be there.
Why it overwrote when you...
All right, so I break literally everything I touch. I'm a great artist and a better QA guy. Not so much on the great artist, but a really good QA guy. All right, nope, see, because I still have my shotgun. It's broke. Oh, that's it. That's what we got.
So
Any questions?
What's memories? I saw memories.
Oh, so for the... Go back to the total screen.
All right.
So we have achievements in the game, and so we wanted the achievements to look like the save files from old PS1 games. So in this, these are your achievements. That's what memories are. In the first game, we called it data slot. You know, just changing it up from game to game.
Admittedly, we had stronger achievements in the first one, but that's all right.
So I noticed that you were walking the whole time. Can you run or?
That is run.
That is, yeah, we're just jerks.
No, so one of our earliest games we made was called How Now See Cow, where we wanted to make a game where it was a game based on Flipper, where you had to send Flipper around, but instead of a dolphin, we wanted a manatee that moved so slow. And I remember when we were developing it, I changed the AI for how it banked corners, and it slightly sped him up. He immediately ran in there and goes, no, slower. It's got to be slower.
Yeah, no,
he just likes trolling people.
Nope.
You said that the game was released already, right?
I'm sorry?
You said that the game is released.
Yes.
Yes.
The game is released right
This
now.
is an interim version though, because we're adding New Game Plus right now.
Is it available on Steam?
Yes, it's on Steam and itch.io.
But if you wait 10 days, it's going on sale.
Yeah, we're, for the New Game Plus, we're going to release that for the Steam's winter sale. Kind of try to get more people interested in the game.
Actually, has the alarm gone off yet?
Yeah.
What's the Japanese anime? You said you hired some Japanese.
So he keeps skipping the cutscenes.
I'm not skipping them. I just said, oh God,
He
the dog's on me.
disabled the cutscenes in this build because we knew we had a short period of time.
I didn't realize it was going to be this long.
Yeah, all the cutscenes are voice acted, and they're all done by two of his workmates when he was working in Japan teaching English. So it's a lady and a man, and one plays Hank and the other plays
Sensei
Cass.
and Morizaki Sensei.
There you go. He knows their names, not me.
So we have a lot of statue-based puzzles in here, for whatever reason.
Because we had statue models.
Yeah, because I had statue models and I'm really lazy. So basically, we want to, okay.
So, any more questions?
No? No?
Good stuff, really good stuff.
All right. Ta-da! Thanks, guys.
You should really do some commentary in a like special edition or something. Seriously, it makes the
Just
game
run
so
through.
much fun.
This is the sequel to Prototype.
We can do that. Add some little
Cool.
bell
So,
bubbles in the game.
continuing on with non-Unreal territory, we have another really cool project, which I haven't played, but I really want to, and it's Elsie. So.
Here, why don't you use this? What's in it's HDMI
Oh,
2.
okay.
Nope,
Made this play
nope,
for it.
that's not working.
Actually, you know what? I might have.
You're making this so complicated.
I might have an adapter, but.
That's the only thing.
Yeah.
Actually, that would be.
It's easier.
It's just easier.
You don't have a circuit.
This USB sucks. So just start transferring the files.
Start transferring.
Yeah, just copy the files onto your desktop. So you just disconnect the.
I don't have space for it. Wonderful.
This is the USB disconnect.
Which one do you want?
Mostly just actually ignore the slideshow. I mostly just wanted to talk about the jets.
You look small. You look like you're an efficient person.
So hey everyone, my name is Alejandro. This is Pedro. He's been helping me with the art in the game recently. Originally, I was gonna just be lazy and just show you guys like some gameplay of the game. But I decided I wanted to show you guys something more special than just the game. It was the journey from start to now. So this was one of the first pictures I captured of the game. So yeah, so the game is an action platformer. I wanted to pick something easy to do because it was my first game that I started in October 2016, I think. I originally was like a programmer for vending machines, and I wanted to do something more fun. So I transitioned over to game programming. So I was like, oh, you know what's fun? Mega Man, that was like one of my favorite games. So I want to make a game that's like that. So I started transitioning over, I installed Unity. I started learning, how physics works, how art works. And this was like the very first GIF I was recording of just like getting just the most basics of physics going. I was super proud about this. And then, I was just working on it very casually. And someone told me like, hey, there's an event going on nearby. It's called GakuCon. You should go there and show off your game. So I was like, oh, that's great. Let me just start working on the game. So I started putting more effort into the game. I started putting extra weapons. I started putting conveyor belts. I started playing more Mega Man games to see like, oh, what's fun about those games? What did I like? So I was like copying their physics and doing more stuff. I was working on my first enemy that was, using a raycast system and like, being able to detect walls.
It was great. And then like, it felt like kind of boring, just like, you know, just seeing the enemies move around and stuff. So I was like, oh, you know, let me experiment with like mayhem and like different effects. So this is when I started like learning about particle systems, shaders and stuff. So, you know, just craziness like this, like just having enemies explode and making the screen go crazy. And then like this became like the basis of LC, just mayhem. So I started going like further and like, you know, how chaotic can I make the game? So I was like, you know, what if like enemies just filled the screen with garbage? That was great. And then I was like, what if I made it even worse? So I was like, you know, one of my greatest achievements back then, and 2 years ago. So then like, I was like learning more about tile mapping. So I was like developing my own like tile mapper. I was like, oh, you know, what's, just putting in every individual tile doesn't seem efficient. So I started researching like how people do tile maps. I was like, oh, it's much better. So I started making my own tile map. And, you know,
Where do we have that now?
Huh?
Where do we have that now?
Because
This looks great.
this is what we have.
Okay.
Well, what we have now is better.
Okay.
So I started developing the game further to try to get it ready for, you know, this event where it was gonna be my first ever public showing. I was like super nervous. I was like, oh, I have to make the game like look super nice. And I was just working on like more shaders. And then this was like on the day that we were showing off the game. It was done. I was super proud of it. It took 2 months to get to this point. And then I was like just showing off the game to like a bunch of people. It was like a little prototype, but you know, I was proud of it. It was my first game. And then like a month later, I went to PAX South to just look at games and just talk to new people. I met like some new developers. I was like, man, PAX is amazing. Like having people come up to a developer and just like, you know, tell them like how much you love their game. I wanted that too. So I made it my goal to go to PAX one day. So I started working on the game even more. So I started going crazy. I was like, you know, what if I translate like bullet hells to platformer to like keep going with the mayhem? So this was like one of the boss fights I was making. And then I was going crazy with like enemies. You know, just like this was like a sample of like some of the enemies and how the fighting system was working back then. The game's like, it's, back then it was less platforming based and more, it was more action oriented rather than the platforming orientation. Cause I was just like, I wanted like, it was the idea I wanted more of a fighting game than just like a Mario platform. So then I started developing the game further. What point were we? Yeah. I was developing the game further, making like, you know, enemies better. I was adding more effects, just trying to add more polish, and I was starting to submit the game for reviewing for PAX South for 2018 for this year. And all right. So yeah, this is more, you know, just more enemies, garbage. And I was working on the first boss fight to send it for reviewing. This is like the first model of it. It looked terrible, and then I was like learning more about like scripting a boss, and then I learned about like, you know, just ignore that. So and then like my boss fights were like, you know, going crazy. I had like only like 2 more days left before my submission. I was super nervous. This is what my boss fight looked like. That's not a boss fight. This is garbage. And then like a day before my submission, I was like, oh, it's finally starting to look better. And this is like what my submission was like looking like, the boss fight. The boss was like moving smoother, and then like everything was like just so much nicer. And then this was the day of the submission. I had like 15 minutes left. I submitted it. It was great. So I kept working on the game. What's it called? And then I got an email on November saying like, hey, we're happy to tell you your game got accepted to PAX South. I was super ecstatic. I was like, oh, that's amazing. So I started working on the next boss fight. This was it. Like, it was like the prototype of it. I was super excited. I was putting more effort into the game, making everything more complicated. I was making everything, you know, I was just trying to like every boss fight, every new feature had to be better than the next one, so that's what it was looking like. And then, you know, we started like making new art for it, and then this was like on day of the, like, we were flying toward like to PAX that day, and this was like the GIF I recorded. I was like, oh, the game is like working. The boss fight looks, you know, looks polished, looks great, and have some video, some GIF. Don't rush me with that. Running out of time. What are you doing? Pedro, don't rush me. What are you doing? Just give us more time.
No. Please.
Oh no.
Please, we're all done. See, that's the countdown to your doom.
No.
Please, we haven't even gotten to the best part.
All right, it's fine, it's fine. So, PAX was, you know, we were there at PAX, we were showing off the game. I was gonna show you guys pictures of like our booth and, you know, like the empty convention. It was super amazing. I was having so much fun. I met like thousands of people. Everyone was loving the game. Nintendo was like giving us a card to, so they can give us like a free dev kit so we can like port the game over. And then after that, my father passed away like 2 weeks after PAX. I was feeling terrible. And I just stopped developing the game for like 8 months. And then I came back on it in November, and I decided I just want to scrap everything, just start over. And then that's when I started working with Pedro and Bryant. Bryant's not here, but the two. Oh no.
No, we can never leave.
I can talk forever. So I started working with Pedro and Bryant on new art, and because like, you know, fuck it, I just want to make like brand new, or I want to make the game even better than what it was, because I've spent way too much time working on this game. I want to make it look even better. So we redesigned Elsie, so she's more stylish, this looks way better. Started working on more particles, and then we started working on like improved physics. This was, and then like Pedro had told me like, hey, there's a submission for PAX East for the Indie Mega booth in 3 weeks, and that was like, we just started redoing the entire game. I had deleted all the code. I was starting from scratch. So we had 3 weeks to get the game ready for the PAX East submission. So this was like me redoing all the physics, everything with my new like experience, and we started working on more things. Let's skip that. So I was getting more stuff done. We were working on, you know, new tile sets, new UI. Everything's more improved. What is this?
Oh, sorry. Something more recent.
So yeah, we were like, well, actually, the version before this, Elsie was like all room based. It wasn't more like Mega Man style levels. Everything's just like contained in a single room. That was okay for the time being, but I was like, I want to be more like ambitious, and I was like, oh, let me procedurally generate an entire level, and that's what Elsie is now. Like, it's a full-fledged level that you actually travel. You know, you're going through like a full Mega Man procedurally generated level, and then at the end of the level, there's boss fights like this one, where it's just, you know, it maintains its mayhem, but it's now more, instead of everything contained in a single room, it's now many rooms back to back.
So basically this entire game is almost being reworked from the ground up, but mostly on art. We wanted to focus on art. That's when I came in, brought in Bryant. And then we ended up submitting to PAX in those 3 weeks. And now we're just waiting to hear back if we're going to be going to PAX or not.
Looks like you are. Yes, you guys are.
Hope so.
I think we should start skipping questions so that everybody can present if you guys don't mind.
That's fine.
So Praveen, I know you work on a
Yeah,
lot of
just,
stuff.
I won't give a presentation. I'll save it for next time because I'm not really eligible for Unreal, I don't think. I'll just show you what it is. So basically, we're building a non-player character engine for Magic Leap. So basically, you're taking the, this is an AI robot. It's got the new Qualcomm. This is the simple Python version. So basically making the a Python server. So there's different types of totems too. So basically there's little Bluetooth things here. So basically what we're doing is I created a Python server and made an ARKit 2 app, and using Unreal, their ComPort API with Python. I'm also trying to do it in Unity too, because I'm actually, a little more comfortable with Unity, but since this is Unreal, I wanted to try Unreal. But basically what's gonna happen is, I'll give you guys demos at our next meetup when we're not close to midnight. But basically, these real robots interact with virtual objects inside your Match Leap game or ARKit game. So it's basically, that's actually interesting what these guys are doing with their game within a game, very meta. So basically it's like, and the grant program is Saturday for Match Leap, so we're gonna apply for a grant for this and 20 other ideas we have. So all we're really doing is like coming with ideas and simple demos and a little shoot to video. So in fact, I have a guest here. This is his first time. He wants to introduce himself. His first time.
Hey guys, my name is Milan Kulic and I'm working on a AR project. Currently I'm not a developer, but we're working on something new, so I'm excited to submit on Saturday as well. So thank you for the help. Looking to meeting you guys.
So one of our little, the Matching's got a sense of humor. So one of our ideas is every time we submit something, we're gonna like pad our estimates with like little nonsense. And if we get enough like submissions, people padding our estimates, we're gonna buy ourselves a mini submarine and have a little joke. So like Uncle Rony Evans gonna buy us a mini sub. So we'll see how it goes. So that's what we're working on. But I'll actually give you a full demo when we go.
Well done, look. So, Matt, I know you and your girlfriend have been working some really cool stuff, right?
Yeah, sure.
So, you need the laptop, I guess?
Yeah.
Jeez, man, you didn't bring anything of your own?
I mean, I did, but I just put it away.
That's SK Developers for you.
Yes.
Okay, so... Fine, I've been plugging HDMI cables all night and now I can do it on my own.
Alright. So this is a project I've been doing for the architecture building or department here at FIU. The purpose is to kind of teach and have students practice design thinking techniques given a limited amount of space. The idea is that you're going to build this architectural design within a 9 by 9 by 9 inch cube. And then some of the parts are large, and then some of the parts are like a little bit smaller, and you try and use all the parts in a limited amount of space and create like architectural design using some techniques. So the professor I was working for asked me to create this kind of tool in VR where you can do this, kind of connect parts, put them, take them apart and everything. I just had the basic kind of implementation down, and then it was the end of the grant money. So then the project went over to Sienna for another professor who was interested in the project, and she started adding more of the interaction techniques and kind of some of those better user experience implementations. Like the menu with to be able to change the color of the objects, and also creating a tutorial. So we'll just have this short video show kind of the idea. So first we show the tutorial, kind of teaches you how to get around, teleporting, grabbing the object, and then dropping it, you know, connecting some objects. You can just have them overlap and then let go, and then they're connected. You can take them apart as easily as you put them together, and then also you can rotate the object in your hand. You know, some of the basic stuff I had implemented with the original part of the project. She also changed the environment, and it's now more of like a classroom than this open area. Yeah, and there's this snapping feature so that you can have a little bit more like accurate placement. You can see that the snapping isn't quite one-to-one with box. We ended up fixing that, and also it doesn't snap all the time now. Only snaps when objects are overlapping or overlapping with this grid to kind of show you your workspace area. Didn't realize how outdated this video was. Yeah, all the parts are different colors.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, you get the general idea. It's just a simple project for the architecture students, and we're taking it little by little, a little bit further. We just got in saving and loading, which will be nice.
Next is multiplayer.
Yeah, multiplayer and markup. Multiplayer is going to be very difficult because we didn't start the project with the concept of multiplayer. It was definitely something I didn't want to spend so much time working on originally. I just kind of wanted to put something together for my professor to use and work with. But we're hoping that the multiplayer won't be too big of a task, although we'll probably have to redo a lot of this. But the idea of, you know, being able to have the teacher in there. Currently, they do this project, but it's with wood. Wood pieces, you glue them together, or however you fasten them together. And then that can be very troublesome because then you build this whole design, and then the teacher's like, oh, well, see what you want to do, or maybe if you had this block here instead, and it's very hard to conceptualize, you know, if I had this with different lighting or pieces at different places, and with the wood and everything, it can be kind of expensive. So this kind of having this virtual environment, you know, you can put together these pieces very easily, not have to worry about physics of objects, and be able to, you know, have multiple iterations, markup, have your teacher kind of look at it in different ways, and I think it would be very helpful. Yeah. Anything else you want to add? Any questions?
You guys planning on selling this to as an educational tool for?
Currently, no. Right now, it's kind of trying to get some research grants for it. Our professor that we're working for is trying to do. Not sure if it's ever going to be sold, but right now, we're just trying to get it in the hands of students. I'm not sure what's going to be the takeaway from this. It's just some interesting project we're working on.
It would be interesting if this could like overlay into like a blueprint for actual architectural printouts.
Yeah, yeah. And having that building in VR is really nice. But for the purpose of this, it's kind of more of a design thinking. You're not making actual architectural structures that you would, you know, use. It's just kind of that element of I have a limited amount of space and objects this size. How can I put it together to create a aesthetically pleasing, you know, model? Yeah. But yeah, it definitely you know, brings that up, and I think what will be interesting is kind of the user interaction techniques, which I think is very interesting with VR. Is how can we take this very immersive environment, but then it's very limited as far as input. You know, I can't grab things with my fingers and stuff. I have to use these controllers, and then trying to make that as intuitive as possible, because no matter, even if it's using a sword and shield, you still have to tell people you have to grab the buttons, use the buttons to grab and hold them. You know, it's not as intuitive as you may think as a developer. So definitely, you know, when it comes to building design structures and stuff, you really have to think about like how can I have the most amount of control without it being overly complicated that you have to have like a textbook to learn this, you know. But yeah. Anything else?
Oh, I've never even been. There you go. You guys are amazing.
We want to go home.
All right, so somebody, bye, John. You could say bye at least.
Bye, everyone. Bye. See you.
So as somebody that grew up playing a lot of shared adventure games, I feel kind of, you know, that next project is kind of giving me a Space Quest vibe, and I kind of really dig it. So Alex and Pedro again with Imstar this time.
So how many projects do you have, guys?
Alright, so, yeah, wait.
They're developing everything, that's it. Maybe you should start your own publishing studio, seriously.
We've thought about it.
Yeah. Oh, I got an adopt. Oh, you need both pieces.
No, I got it.
Yeah, you got it? You sure?
Let me get mine.
He's got something going over here, sorry.
We'll try to be super quick so that we can like.
Yeah, I mean, this is gonna be really short.
Yeah,
because,
this primarily
there's
belongs
not a
in
lot.
like the prototype section more than anything else.
No, what is this?
It didn't get saved. It's all good.
Oh, no, it's it. It's it.
That was it? Great.
Yeah, it's over.
So,
okay, so Imstar's the next project that I'm starting to work on. For those of you that have played old school games, it's Futurama meets Chrono Trigger. If you don't know what Chrono Trigger is, it's Futurama meets Paper Mario. So it's like, the story in the game is that there is an empire that is taking over the current galaxy that you're living in, and you are the Emperor's left hand sent to go quell the last remaining members of the Rebel Alliance. At the same time, an experiment gone wrong in the far reaches of space reduces everybody's potential almost down to zero. And as you're traveling to what is called the generation ship, your goal in the game is to break your limits by raising your potential and also raising the potentials of the people that you meet around you. I guess the generation ship that you're going to go to is very Legend of Zelda style, where each part of the ship has a different biome for different alien species that you get to visit and interact with. And that's kind of like the primary basis of the game. From there, you'll interact with what I hope to be like very unique aliens and creatures, and have very funny dialogue, and kind of like not be too serious about it kind of thing. But also visit like some cool places, I guess, artistically in 2D. So far, that's the concept that we're working on, and I'm currently working on the demo at the moment. Upon submitting for this competition, it was like, oh, the submission is tomorrow, and I'm like, okay, just super nuts. My lesson from Cattlepunk was, don't work on tools at the end, work on tools at the beginning. So that's kind of been where I'm at right now. I wanted to kind of work a little faster, but it was a lot of learning on the go, and I wanted to work on a few tools at the same time to make life easy and stuff. So I can walk you through that real quick. Trying to do this as fast as possible, sorry. So this is primarily a C++ project with very little blueprints in here. I use blueprints more as just like a container to do small minor testings and stuff like that. The very first thing that I wanted to do was get global states going into the world. Global states are going to be pretty much what you're seeing on the screen, where you would have a world state, menu state, combat state. And I created a state machine that uses like a container storage that you can pop states into, and when the state's complete, they'll pop back out, and it's pretty neat, and it handles itself, and it lets you transition into menus popping up, or the player controller changing, or the pawn who's being possessed changing completely, and taking control of the game itself. That led me to my next thing was, okay, well, now that I have the world stage working where the menu pops up and I can switch stuff, we need to work on combat. And I wanted to design a combat tool that was easy for designers to come in and set up what would be a battle arena, right? And to be able to, dictate the space that's going to be the battle arena, and to put configurations of enemies within that battle arena, save it, and then when you, when the game loads up, it'll load that configuration in there. Old school games like Chrono Trigger and stuff like that, they did not take you to a separate screen for battle. It was all on screen, and I wanted to kind of maintain that. So I created this tool to kind of help facilitate that. So maybe I could show an example here. Let me see. Well, here I'll change this to like a previous configuration that I made. And then you'll see like these two enemies are there, and let's go here. And then you can kind of just like mess with it and stuff like that. And those other two are actually live enemies that will pop into the right spot. And for instance, let's say you wanted to change up where like these enemies are at, you can just move them around, and they will still dictate where, when you start the combat, the enemies will move to, and then you can just save that position by saving it to the actual map. So this is the next step. This is all done in compile time, not runtime like I did last time. So that means that all the data here is serialized right into the map. So I don't need to save any data. I don't need to write any save functions for this. It's right into the map. So all I do is start begin play and say, hey, load configuration, boom, it grabs it from the map data and puts it right there. It might make the map hefty if we make like really big maps and put a bunch of enemies in it, but we're gonna break it up into small pieces. Outside of that, then I started working on the actual combat itself. That was a big doozy. I wanted to make sure that, Paper Mario has a bunch of unique skills and where you have to actively press buttons and draw on the screen and stuff like that. So I wanted to kind of bring that to life here in a very kind of like a top-down way. So I started working on a system that would kind of like allow that. And we looked at a few battle systems out there because there's the active time battle, and we were like, oh, we can go with that. But then we thought like, well, if you're drawing on the screen and stuff and things are constantly attacking at you, like that's not gonna be fair. So then we looked at Final Fantasy 7 and 8, and they have kind of like a weird active time battle hybrid where there's like a wait and go kind of system. And I started implementing that, which is like a battle queue where you just basically, every enemy and player on the screen can queue an action into it, or can put an action into a container, right? It goes in, blah, blah, blah. And then the system itself will recognize, okay, there's something in the container. Who's the actor that put it in? Let's do that action first, all right? Let's put the system on wait, process that action, and then once that action is done, we'll go back to the queue, get the next thing until it's empty, and then it goes on to pause. That's been a big challenge. That's mostly done in C++, and it's almost coming along there. For the most part, we can queue actions. Let me see if I can get these guys to, can't even click it to the screen. So they got into space, whatever. But for the most part, my character is like running infinitely off screen, just a tiny bug. But the whole idea is you put attack, it went into the queue, and you saw, if you caught it, it showed on the left-hand side, oh, this ability activated. And that's actually popping from the queue into a system that I'm currently learning now that Unreal provides, which is the U gameplay ability system, which is insane. It's super crazy. My blueprint class right here, you'll see it only does one thing, right? Everything is mostly done in C++. I've been trying to, it's funny because once you start doing everything in C++, it's hard to get back into blueprints, but I'm trying to get back into blueprints to do things a little bit more easier. But this is just an activation of an ability that you create, and this system is super awesome, especially for RPGs, action RPGs, anything that has spells, anything that's dealing with stats. So far from what I'm learning, you activate this and it has a built-in state machine for when the skill starts, if it's paused, if it's resumed, when it finishes, and you can do tasks and abilities in it. But that's pretty much it, so I'm glad I'm right on time. So, if you guys have any questions.
The ATB that you're talking about, you're talking about pausing the game time when you're actually selecting abilities, right?
Yes,
so like when you're
correct.
Attack, magic spell, pause,
yes.
and then continue.
We've gone a lot of back and forth on how we want to do those those specific things. Because there's some games that will look like maybe some do, some don't, some stop it when an ability is active and then it's like happening, everything else pauses.
Yeah.
While some keep going.
So I looked at, we got our inspiration for that for our Final Fantasy VII, because Final Fantasy VII has a thing where when the menu pops up outside of the main menu, which the main menu says attack, spells, items, and stuff like that. The moment you select a menu from there and it brings up like a child menu, it immediately puts the active time battle on wait. Lets you select an enemy, lets you put something on the screen, and then it queues it up.
And that's where you're using your stat, so you can know when you're in which layer of menu you're in.
Exactly. Right. And that allows me to then get that same kind of like wait, go kind of thing. And then on top of that, they also have things that if you have a cinematic move in Final Fantasy VII, it puts it on wait.
Like summons or something.
Summons or even like moves that like
spells, fire spell, even just attack, when a character goes to attack, all the other ATBs pause while that animation's happening, playing, and then comes back, and then it keeps going.
Yeah, and that's what I've implemented. So hopefully
So,
next time I show this
before
game,
the lights
like
go off,
huh?
before the lights
Yeah.
go off, because at midnight, that's it, they go off. So from now on, it's just a bunch of videos. I mean, I have a personal project, which to be honest, I wouldn't even bother talking much about. I'll just show you some videos, because I've put like in the whole year maybe 30 hours in it, probably not even. I mean, you know, I'm a huge fan of fantasy, for those of you who know me, but I also like sci-fi, and since I've been working fantasy all those years, I just needed some small break on the side. It's more like for fun rather than anything else. So I love the Mass Effect series, and you know, I always wanted, you know, I'm a sucker for open world games. So I kinda tried, that's a very big way to put it, you know, doing something similar. Like, this is like bare bones, you know, I just use marketplace assets I modified, and some code I modified, you know, from marketplace, again, blueprints and stuff. So here it is, no more talking, it's very rough. Could be, no thanks. It could be either first person or third, I don't even know. I mean, like I said, just for fun. Yeah, I implemented flashlights, you know, I go for that Doom-esque look, I guess. You know, I would prefer, you know, ideally if that was ever an actual game, I would like the user to be able to play between, switch between first and third person views. Of course, you know, graphics for me are a big thing. I put all the post-processing effects in there and the whole 9 yards, you know, with particles and everything. I modeled a couple of meshes myself. You know, it's pretty much an exercise on sci-fi stuff. So enough of that guy switching on and off flashlights. Here's the third person version of it, you know. Actually, I put that map, you know, the outside of that map was put together today in like 20 minutes before coming here, so it sucks. The inside is the same that I had. I used a lot of Paragon assets, actually, I really dig them. Didn't even modify those guys. But the third person mode, I mean, yeah, that's Paragon asset that like it's slightly modified. Again, very heavy post-processing.
This is Myron's sci-fi.
Myron's sci-fi, yeah. Like, make sure you don't vote for that.
Are you sure? I don't know, the graphics are pretty impressive.
Why am I gonna vote
Thanks.
for that?
So, yeah, let me fast forward a bit. Like, you know, I also use some Mars landscape that I really dig.
From the actual rovers?
No, there was like, there is this awesome package on the marketplace. It's called Affordable Landscapes. They either have, you know, each landscape individually, which is a lot more affordable, or if you can afford it, just buy the whole package. It's kind of expensive, but they give you 30 landscapes, so you can't go wrong with that.
Mark, when are you releasing this?
Probably in 100 years.
Yeah, man, it looks good. I'm gonna lie.
Thanks. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. As you can see, half of the map is totally like, you can see through the masses. Like it's, like I said, it's a big mess. And it's not a static mess. See what I did there? Okay, so yeah, you know, Mars is huge. Nobody built anything there. I mean, come on, it's realistic. It just got there. Give me a break.
What's the name of this terrain? What?
Affordable landscapes. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, you know, I better stop like showing the same old stuff. So the next couple of projects, I mean, some of them we kind of had to drag them here. I'm not gonna point fingers, it's okay. And others actually submitted their videos. It's all very short. It's not even on the 8-minute mark. So, you know, we got you know, stick to the ends to this, so let's play those. So the next one is War Planet. It's a VR game. Got released I believe last year. Planet VR.
And they do their own music as well.
Yeah, they wrote the music for it. Really cool stuff. Then let's move on to Project Ghost. Good friend of mine, Gaspar, has been doing that on Unity. He's pretty active with it. And the fine thing is he always says he's not a developer. Actually, he sent me 2 videos. So one is mixed reality and the other is virtual reality.
Time you're done healing. Don't look at me like that. This isn't your first time. Look, I don't have time to explain. Just get in here. We need you. Yes, just walk into the portal. Move it, move it, move it. And then we have Islands of Nine, also one of the most successful Kickstarter projects around. They released this August, you know, the one that just passed. And they also just released a new update, I believe, 2 weekends ago or something. So, there you go.
Please cease all hostile engagement and prepare for battle royale.
So they cut the power. They cut the power, I guess.
No, that happens at random.
No.
Unless the 9 ran out of luck.
What happened?
Unless the 9 ran out of luck.
No comment, man. I'm not gonna make any comments. Where's the sound, actually?
I don't know. It's coming out of that. That's off. You would have to take it off of this. And now.
Oh, that's why they want again?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's a shutdown that they do. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, everybody.
Everybody filled out these forms. Please return them so we can do a count. Who's the winner of the categories?
Probably the pilot was maybe adding like sort of rubber band and stabilizing the shooting of the arrow. Maybe because if these 2 points are like floating around to the center, right? You're stabilizing or something like that.
simple.
Good suggestion, actually. Never thought about it. We'll try it out.
This is like what? Once a month? Or?
Every second Tuesday of the month.
Every second Tuesday of every month. And we also have another one, which is the last Tuesday.
That's the next one.
Yeah, in January.
January we should be doing like, you know, the award ceremony for whoever won today. So we'll be announcing the winners, giving away the awards, and yeah.
And everything's on meetup.com.
Everything's on Meetup, and then we have another one for Making Miami, which is the like more general Meetup. There's like an Unreal Engine specific.
Here you go, man. This is from everyone on the
Right, this one we have Making Miami, which is the last.
We didn't have to put our names on it, right?
No, of course not.
There's nobody puts
As long as you can vote for yourself, you know. I mean,
we're not having
that's
this
what I
summer
mean.
Meetup.
Yeah,
So we're skipping this summer.
I think it's kind of obvious,
For
right?
next
You
month,
can't vote for
we're probably gonna
yourself.
just host
You
a
can vote for
game jam
anybody
here.
else.
The last one?
So we won't have a meetup for that one.
It's always here. And it's
The global game jam, I think it's gonna be here again. It was here last year. Alright, so not always. So this meetup we split between FIU and Davy. Right?
It's Christmas.
Multiplayer
still out is
so yeah, so that's why they're in Davy
Matt,
because
that's
half
the,
this like group.
remember like they had the white Unreal
Engine
Engine
Miami
product
meetup we do
was like a bunch of
so it's either FIU or honestly where we get the
Unreal
space.
Diamond Student
We
Summit.
started at NBC's Magic Center, I think downtown. We've been doing it at FIU. And depending on the room availability, we're either doing it at FIU again for the next semester, or we might be taking it to the lab because I have a buddy that works there. Yeah, what's your name? David Page. Yeah, I help organize this one, and then I also run the Make It Happen.
Cool. I'm probably gonna come on the next one too.
Yeah, man. Yeah, hit us up and join our Discord. We have the Unreal Florida Discord, and then we also have the Bengals Miami Discord. So yeah, you're more than welcome. Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Nice meeting you.
Me too.
Nice to meet you, man. Myra.
Working on it.
Where are you from? Serbia. Serbia, so, yeah, you're a neighbor, man.
Yeah,
That's German.
That's German? Yeah, we are from that part of the world.
Alright, where do we put it?
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Just
we'll
be
be here
tomorrow.
Oh, you'll be?
We have to be here. I have to be here longer. I'm gonna be, I'm gonna do 4 hours, whatever you do.
I got the one with those vectors.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I got the, but you know, I contacted them for SDK. They said they don't have it out yet. I mean, unless you do the Kickstarter.
Yeah, I get any Kickstarter.
Oh, Q sent to me?
They sent me the SDK. Yes.
Oh, cool. Yeah.